Welcome to the Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community, a space where justice meets action and community voices rise. Each episode, we bring you stories from the front lines, changemakers, disruptors, and everyday heroes who are building a more just, equitable, and liberated world. This is more than a podcast. It's a call to listen, learn, and move together. You were just listening to music from the incredibly talented Stephen Kong. You can find him on Spotify and Bandcamp. Today we have with us Francine Gadsden. Francine is a designer, entrepreneur, and founder dedicated to empowering the next generation of girls. Born in Brooklyn, New York, as one of 14 children, her love for fashion began at age 10 when she completed her first sewing project, an apron. After graduating from the International School of Design in Manhattan, she gained industry experience working with Audrey Smaltz Inc., collaborating with renowned designers such as Donna Karan, Adrienne Vittadini, Calvin Klein, Gucci, and Givenchy. After relocating to Northern California, Francine launched Francine's Fashions for Children, a clothing line that earned national attention and was featured in major media outlets and sold in Nordstrom, Macy's, and children's boutiques across the country. In 2015, she expanded her creative vision with Sticks and Stones Tees and More, a brand showcasing her original artwork and empowering messages, including the widely recognized Afro Puff Girl image. Inspired by the powerful impact of that image on girls, Francine founded Afro Puff Girl Prep Academy in 2023 to help Black and Brown girls recognize their potential and pursue their dreams. Through her work as a designer, entrepreneur, and nonprofit leader, she continues to cultivate creativity, confidence, and self-love in the next generation. Well, hi, Francine. Thank you so much for taking the time to share this platform with me. I'm really excited and really grateful and honored that you decided to share your story, share your voice with me. And I think you have such a powerful and rich story and journey, and I'd love to just explore more of that and also talk more about the work that you do because you've made incredible contributions to the community. But how are you doing today?
I'm good, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, no, of course. So, just starting off, I just wanted to start off with your background. So, in your bio, you said that you grew up in Brooklyn as one of 14 children. So, what was that environment like, and how did it shape who you are today?
So I tell people, I said, I don't have that story that a lot of people like, oh, we grew up in this and that. I was third youngest. So all of my older siblings, I remember being 10 years old crying, thinking one of my sisters was going to die because she turned 21. So there was age gaps, and some of my siblings, when they got their first job or they were working, when they got paid, they would buy us gifts and things like that. So it wasn't a story that I could say that, there was no food on the table. Both my parents worked for the federal government. So we had, but like I said, some of them have moved out on their own and they had their own apartment. So we weren't all in the house at the same time, only during, family gatherings, but not on a daily basis. But also, a lot of my siblings were part of how I did what I did. So I'll go back. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, but at the time I grew up, it was during the 60s. So the schools were segregated.
Okay.
And so I was part of the first integration of the school system. So I took a bus from my neighborhood to an all-white neighborhood that was called Bensonhurst. So at the time we were living in Bedford-Stuyvesant. They gave you classes, like some was cooking classes, some was, different things. So I picked sewing because I figured if I learned how to cook, I would have to help my mom, which I didn't like cooking. I didn't like the whole kitchen thing. But we used to have chores of dicing and cutting up stuff, and she prepared the entire meal. So I said, if I take sewing, but I didn't understand that my mom didn't know how to sew until once I really started to like it. But she actually purchased a sewing machine for me when I was 10. Because she started, I really enjoyed it. But my mom could not even thread a needle. So it would be as a child, it would be humorous because it's like, she can't thread a needle, but you got to understand she was living life. She wasn't trying to create a garment, you know.
Right.
So when my siblings actually saw that I was very interested, I would make clothes, and especially my two younger sisters would wear my clothes because and then one of my sisters an older sister worked for a fabric company, and they used to call it in cuts. And that means it was like maybe 2-3 yards of fabric left over. So, but she worked in the office, so she didn't work selling the fabric, but she would get these, what they considered the in cuts, and we would consider them scraps now.
Okay.
And I would sit there and I would make things with them, especially scarves and stuff. And so then my siblings would sell them to their coworkers, the things that I made. So it kind of, went around. And then once I got in high school, I started giving a fashion show. And my two younger sisters were in high school too. So they would get some of their friends, and their friends would become models. And some of their friends are still interactive with me to this day. And so they would model in the fashion show. My mom worked for the post office, so she would sell tickets to her coworkers. One of my brothers was studying to be a photographer, so he became the photographer. My dad would purchase the foods and the drinks and stuff that we would give, at the fashion show. So it actually was what I consider a family affair, that what people knew how to do, they used it to help, And my mom was she would iron clothing like crispy. So when I wanted to pleat stuff, she would pleat the fabric for me in advance, and then I would sew, and make the garment. So that's how, for me, the dynamics, Then I had a brother that liked to paint. So, and then he would draw. One time I remember him drawing, I made a little, like, I don't want to call it a catalog. It was more a program book of the event itself.
Okay.
And he created the cover image for me as well.
Wow.
So,
no, that's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And, I know you touched on this a little bit just as you were talking right now, but I'd love to further explore it. So, you were saying that you made your first sewing project, which was an apron when you're 10 years old, which I think is really incredible because I have a 10-year-old daughter myself too. I'm like, wow, that's really incredible. You were able to make that at your age. So, do you remember what the moment felt like for you when you realized that you could create something with your own hands?
You know what? I didn't truly understand it at that age, but I was like taking somebody's gonna wear this,
That's
And
really
when, like I
cool.
said, when I came home and my mom had that apron on, now, and I tell people, fast forward, if you only know what you know now, I would have made more of probably a big deal of it. But it was like, oh, but she was cooking, so it wasn't like she was wearing it in the street, So as I start to create stuff, then I start saying, okay, wait a minute. And then growing up in New York, you're around a lot of the fashion industry. So you're right there in the thick of it. So you see these other well-known designers creating stuff, and you're able to create your own level as well. So it was very rewarding, especially once I started giving fashion shows. And then even one of the outfits I made when I was in high school in the fashion show was it was a magazine. I believe it still may be out. It was called Jet Magazine. And one of my dresses made it into that. And I still have a copy of the
Wow.
magazine. So,
Wow, that's really incredible. That's really amazing. And when you think back to your younger self, did you imagine yourself like having that path, like having a path of having a life in entrepreneurship and fashion?
actually I did.
Okay, you
And
did.
I
Wow,
didn't
that's
know the
cool.
word was entrepreneur at the time.
Okay.
But I share with people a lot about one of my uncles. He was a great uncle because he was my mom's uncle. And he actually had a shoe repair shop. And
Okay.
the shoe repair shop at the time, like people getting taps on the bottom of their shoes was really, like just regular, not to wear down the heel of their shoe. I didn't know at the time, but it was that click, 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 click sound. More,
Yeah.
I thought it was. But he would also repair like leather handbags, the straps and stuff.
hmm
So one of the buses when I got into high school, No, I think it was even actually junior high. We would take the city bus to school, and one of the stops that we got off was right near his shop. So we would go in there sometimes after school. So I saw him running a business. It wasn't like I knew the whole fundamentals of it, but what I saw was him operating at his own way, and it was his thing. So I did have that type of vision. And then I use customer service with him as an example with people. Again, I'm young, and him and this woman, I don't know what the conversation was about, but it seemed to be intense and heated between the two of them. And not too long into the conversation, at one point they're laughing, ha ha ha, they hugging and they're walking, and he's escorting her out. And I said, whatever was wrong, he made it right with her.
Okay.
And I never forgot that scene I saw. And so even with, customers, and I tell people all the time, it's not about them being right or wrong, but how you make them feel when they leave your presence.
Okay. Wow. That's a really beautiful story. Thank you for
So
sharing.
I had an example, so it wasn't far-fetched that it was just someone else owning something. I saw somebody I knew own and operate their own business.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing that too. And, something that I want to do with this podcast too is also show how like social justice is in many different spaces, touches a lot of different issues and topics, including fashion. So fashion can sometimes feel exclusive or inaccessible. So how did you navigate that space as a Black woman entering into that industry?
Well, again, I was part of the first example of integration in the school system. So I was fighting injustice before I knew probably how to spell the word injustice.
Wow, that's
and I tell people I know it shaped and it molded me because I couldn't understand or shouldn't have understood or grasped why I was being excluded just because people didn't understand, whether it be my culture, my race, or anything of that magnitude. But also some of the injustice that happened at school, our parents went up to the school and fought, and they were our voice. So when we saw these parents gathering to help, us navigate and to be an advocate for us, it really made a difference. So I didn't feel alone because there was someone that said, I got you on this.
Wow.
No,
I love
so
that.
for me, that always taught me about prejudging someone, just because you look at them and you see something else on the exterior does not mean that that's what the true story is.
Right.
Because sometimes we paint a picture, write a story, or see someone and prejudge them.
Right.
And I constantly tell young people, I said, one thing my dad used to always say, you can even learn a lot from the bum on the street.
Right.
He wasn't always on the street. Something took, place. You're not born and then you grow up there.
Yeah.
So something took place, but sometimes that person even has a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing
they
that.
just made a left when they should have made a right.
Right. Right. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that too. I really love that. And that's also what I want to try to do with this podcast, because I feel there's so much like labeling and stereotyping, stigmatizing, just like really heated rhetoric around like labels, but like there are identities that we carry. So I want to put like the human stories behind these labels.
Exactly.
So hopefully people can listen to them, be like, wow, this person isn't that different from me, because I feel like there's a lot of that us versus them mentality when we have these like really negative narratives around different communities, especially when it comes to marginalized communities. Yeah.
And I do the same now. Even when I hear someone say, I'm like, you don't know their full story.
Yeah, no, totally.
Sometimes I remember there was a woman, I used to go to Berkeley Flea Market a lot, and there was this woman, and she was disheveled, and she talked, in riddles, not making sense. And a guy told me one day, he said, you see that lady over there? And I like, yeah. He said, she was a prominent lawyer in San Francisco. And it was a Black woman. He said, and she went to an event and someone put something in her drink and she's never been the same. Now, it could have been somebody that was envious of her,
Uh-huh.
or someone just with an evil being, I don't
Mhm.
know why they did that, but that was the result of
Mhm.
what happened to her. So
Wow.
she didn't start out that way, you know.
Right.
So that's why I kind of always try to, if
Mhm.
I can speak with the person, to hear their story and say, what
Yeah.
happened to get you to this point?
Yeah. No, I really love that you have that kind of perspective and approach. And, I'd love to talk more with you about your work too. So, what inspired you to launch Francine's Fashions for Children when you moved to Northern California?
Actually, at the time, I had worked for the designer Jessica McClintock.
Okay.
And so we had went to some type of event, and
Mm-hmm.
um, I felt that the child, what they had put on them was
Mm-hmm.
not age appropriate.
Oh, okay.
And
Right.
so I said, you know what, I'm going to develop a children's line. But then that's
Right.
when I had the opportunity to go to LA and look at different fabric vendors. And I
Mm-hmm.
saw a lot of fabrics that dealt with different cultures. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I can still use that fabric, but have them in contemporary clothing
Mm-hmm.
that they can wear it on a regular basis. So
Yeah.
that's how it actually started. That I saw this. I thought it was a need
Yeah.
to identify culturally. And it wasn't, it was Asian inspired fabric, it was African
Okay.
inspired fabric. It was sometimes it was symbols of
Mm-hmm.
different religious factors. But anytime I used anything like that, I always did the research. I didn't just do it
Oh,
because
okay.
some things can't go on certain garments or would be
Right.
considered an insult to that culture.
Okay. Okay. No, I really love that you do that too. And I feel like when it comes to fashion or I don't just clothing in general, I feel like they don't have that intentionality as much as I don't know. I'm thinking of like Disney. Like I've even seen them like, commodifying cultures to make it like a kid's costume or something. So, I
Mhm.
love that you have that intention about like will this piece of clothing be like offensive, because I feel like it's not like people don't always have that always like thinking about what they're putting out there. So yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, cool. So your designs were featured in places like Nordstrom, Macy's, and Essence magazine. So what did that moment mean for you, both personally as well as professionally?
Well, the stores were during the Black History Month
Mm-hmm.
programs, and then it expanded to, hey, we would like to carry your line. So it was gradual, but Essence for me was the one that was the shocker. And I was at an event in Chicago, and a
Mm-hmm.
woman had purchased something from me, one of my garments. But I didn't know who she was, and she
Okay.
went back and took it back, and that's how that happened. So I saw the trickle effect in a different way. It wasn't just that I was here. She took it from this place back to, New York, because I was living in California at the time. But
Okay.
I was traveling to do like wholesale shows and different conventions, and especially women
Mm-hmm.
conferences. I was doing those a lot, you know. So I would follow different women groups on tour, and
Mm-hmm.
then just set up in their event and sell my stuff. So that was the one that really touched me. Plus, it was a national magazine. The Macy's
Okay.
and the Nordstrom, they were locally here in San Francisco. They weren't nationwide.
Yeah. No, that's
So this
incredible
is
though.
something that
Yeah.
took it up, up.
Yeah.
And then also, growing up, buying and reading Essence magazines. So
Mhm.
that is exactly why I said that one was the one. And then from that, it came some other TV shows. I was a little girl on Barney TV show. I was able to
Wow.
design her clothes for.
Okay.
I was on mornings on two, and
Yeah.
then so those type of things
Okay.
led from one thing to another.
Yeah, no, that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And so your image, Afro Puff Girl, clearly struck a powerful chord with young girls. So can you share the moment when you realized how meaningful that image had become?
So actually, there was a program in Oakland called Principal for a Day,
Okay.
And one of
Okay.
my friends is a principal. She was a principal at a school,
Uh-huh.
I think it was middle school, because I was about 8 or 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went, to volunteer myself that day. So a little girl's hair was like this. But the
Okay.
other two girls that she was playing with, their mom must have pressed their hair so it was straight. But all
Mm-hmm.
three were African American. And
Okay.
so the one with her hair in the Afro puffs came running up, and she says to my friend, Miss Johnson, she said,
Mm-hmm.
they said my hair is ugly. So at the
Oh.
time, and I pretty much had natural hairdos for a long time, but at the time,
Mm-hmm.
I actually had locks in my hair. And
Mm-hmm.
so when she said that to my friend, she said, they said my hair is ugly. I said, did you tell them thank you? And
Oh,
she
okay.
looks at me because she doesn't know me because I'm just
Right.
there that day. And
Okay.
gives me this look like, I don't know who this lady, but why would I be telling someone thank you that my hair is ugly?
Right.
So she turns back to my friend and she said, Mrs. Johnson, like I'm indicating I'm not talking to this strange lady. She said, they said my hair is ugly. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, I tell my friends I'm happy, I'm nappy. Culturally,
Mm-hmm.
some blacks find the word nappy offensive. I grew
Mm-hmm.
up where if your hair didn't break a comb, you didn't have good hair. So it was the
Mm-hmm.
texture that was strong hair. So I don't have a problem with that word. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know how much time passed, and I told someone if I knew it was going to elevate to this, I would have paid more attention. So let's
Mm-hmm.
just say 3 months passed. Now this happened in Oakland. I'm in Hayward with some friends, and we rented a space in a park to have play games that we all played when we grew up in New York, but we met
Okay.
here. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting some stuff out my car, and I feel this little girl tapping me on my arm, and she says, "Excuse me." So I'm thinking it's one of my friend's children. And I turned
Okay.
around. She said, "You're the lady that told me my hair was pretty."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, I didn't use those words, but if
Uh-huh.
that's what she digested, you
Yeah.
know? So I
Right.
said to her, I said, "Oh, who are you here with?" And she
Uh-huh.
said, "My dad and my brother's playing baseball." And I said, "Well, me and my friends are having a party. I'll go see if your dad says it's okay for you to come, and
Mm-hmm.
you can come and I'll bring you back." Because it wasn't far, but it was a parking lot that separated the two events. And
Okay.
so I went and I told him, I said, "Hey, I'm not a principal at our school, but if you need to check my credentials, you can call Miss Johnson. She'll tell you I'm okay," and stuff. So she
Uh-huh.
came and she enjoyed the party with my friend. So I went home and that's when I drew the picture, but I knew, and other people may have the image, but I needed her
Mm-hmm.
to be a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
And the whole strength of it for me is the crown underneath, is
Mm.
telling her you're elevating yourself to become this queen.
Yeah.
And so that's how Afro Puff Girl started. And I started making it only for children. Then
Okay.
adults started saying they wanted it. And then so every year I changed the theme of what she does and how she looks. And so sometimes it's colors. And so the one I'm wearing now,
Okay.
is for them to love themselves. And the heart,
Mm-hmm.
may not be able to see, but the
Mm-hmm.
heart is actually 3D. So it's raised up.
Oh, okay.
So every time she changes, so this coming year,
Uh-huh.
I made her the image in gold and called her
Right.
Golden Girl, and made it in silver, and it's called 925. And that's the contents of silver. And then
Mm-hmm.
once they add copper, that's where it gets its strength from.
Okay.
So, and then the last one is the solid black, but I made it with like a sheen to it, and it's black diamond.
Wow, no, thank you for sharing that. I really love that story behind that. And something else that I want to talk to you more about is like representation. So, I think representation is so important and it matters deeply. So why is it important for young girls, especially Black and brown girls, to see themselves reflected in art and media?
Unfortunately, society
Mm-hmm.
or the media or shows, programs, a lot of times we're depicted in a negative manner. We're the
Mm-hmm.
prostitutes, we're the uneducated persons, um, we're not seen as,
Right.
sometimes beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So with representation, if, I share with parents a lot. I may not even say anything different that you're saying, but they're hearing it from somebody different, so they hear it
Oh,
differently.
right.
So if
Right.
I can help them hear it or see it differently and be encouraged and be strengthened, you know, I told someone I've been wearing eyeglasses, prescription glasses since 10. So when I
Okay.
see little children, even with prescription glasses, I'm like, oh, your glasses are so pretty,
Oh,
because I
right.
know that
Right.
that's not really something they, oh, I want to get some glasses, or if it is sunglasses, but
Mhm.
so just that one little thing that sometimes someone else could say to you can help,
Mhm.
build you up. So I want them to start to see themselves. I just started
Yeah.
create finisher design, and it's for girls that play flag football. You
Okay.
know, so
That's
I'm
really
really
cool.
proud of how that design actually turned out. So
Okay.
those type of things is to go into arenas where you're
Uh-huh.
there, but there's no spotlight.
Yeah. No, that's
And
cool.
if I can help bring the light to some things that,
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing with the Afro Puff Girl, to go back,
Mhm.
is someone questioned me one day why she doesn't have any facial features. And I
Okay.
said, because I want her to be like a mirror.
Oh,
When
I
the little
love
girl
that.
looks at it, only she
Yeah.
sees that her hair is like that. That's
Uh-huh.
it.
Yeah.
Because then if it's the eyes and nose are like, oh, but my eyes don't look like that, but my nose don't look like that. You see?
Right. Right.
So I just want them to see the outline of what
Okay.
they look like or recognize themselves as.
Yeah, I really love that. I'd love to hear more about like the reactions that you've gotten. So, what kind of reactions have you seen from girls when they encounter Afro Puff Girl images?
Oh, I would say 99.9% of the time they're so happy.
Okay.
Or like there's times I'll hear little girls, Mommy, Mommy, she looks like me.
Mm-hmm.
Her hair's like mine, you know.
Uh-huh.
And one situation, I was at a festival once, and the dad wanted, the little girl wanted the hoodie with the image of the girl was on the hoodie.
Mm-hmm.
And the parent, I don't know their financial situation. So he
Okay.
tells her, well, your birthday's coming up. You can let your grandmother and your auntie know that that's what you want to get for your birthday.
Okay.
And so again, I don't know how much time passed. And so I'm at another event, and the little girl says, I got my birthday money. And the
Uh-huh.
dad says she started writing notes to all the family members that she wanted this hoodie.
Uh-huh.
And she told me how much she got, and it was less than what the hoodie cost. I said, "Oh, you got a good day. It's on sale now."
Oh, wow. Wow.
So I made it the price to how much she collected from her family members. So
Wow.
it's not just about them seeing themselves; it's just knowing that this is something they really want, and not
Yeah.
just pointing. I like that. I like that. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I really love that a lot. And the next question I had for you. So in 2023, you founded Afro Puff Girl Prep Academy. What was the moment that made you realize that you needed to create something bigger than a brand?
Well, actually, I didn't find it. It found me.
Oh, it did. I'd love to hear more about that. What happened?
so,
Uh-huh.
actually, the guy well, I won't say the guy, the printer that I use, I've been with
Mm-hmm.
him for 25 years. And he would constantly tell me, oh, you need to give a conference. You need to give a conference.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh, so I kept passing it along. And then he was like, look, I found this, I found that. And he's out of Akron, Ohio. And he's constantly sending me stuff. So I said, let me just do this conference. So I showed someone, I said, hey, I said, look, I'm going
Okay.
to do this conference. I'm working on this flyer. And they're like, you know what? You should open a nonprofit.
Oh.
And I'm like, nah. And then, of course, it came back and around more than one time. So I started working to set up a nonprofit. So
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting with a friend. I said, well, I want to call it Afro Puff Girl. And
Mm-hmm.
then she was like, and what else after that? Like school, academy. And then I said, Prep Academy, because then it would spell the same way forward or backwards.
Oh,
It's once you
okay.
use the initials, so
Uh-huh.
it'd be APGPA. And
Uh-huh.
if you go backwards, so no matter which way
Okay, I
you're
love
going, you're
that.
Afro Puff Girl.
Wow, that's really cool. I didn't make that connection too. And can you tell us more about what is the mission of Afro Puff Girl Academy and what kind of impact do you hope that it has on girls that it serves?
Well, the mission is to actually to build them up, and again, it goes back to
I
their
love that.
parents may say something, and I use this
Hmm.
example that when I was, younger, like maybe in high school or something, um, and you wanted to go out, and your mom said you can't go out till you clean your room,
Okay.
and you were, you resenting it, but you're doing it. But then you
Hmm.
go to your friend house so they can go with you. And their parents say, oh no, they can't go until they clean their room, wash the dishes, whatever. And what do you say? I'll
Hmm.
help.
Okay.
You was willing to do something in someone else's
Right.
behalf than you did for your own self.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at Afro Puff Girl Prep Academy, is to
Wow.
that they'll benefit from what we're sharing, even if their parents may have told them this 5 times. They
Mm.
benefit more when they hear it from someone
Right.
else.
Right.
And especially if the someone else is their peer.
Right.
So we had, for example, we had a hair braiding seminar to teach girls how to braid hair. Because through
Hmm.
college, I actually braided hair, and that's how
Okay.
I made my money as well.
Okay.
So the person that taught the class was 17 years old, one
Oh,
of their
wow.
peers.
Okay.
You
That's
see?
cool.
So that's why I'm saying it's about
Yeah.
connecting girls. So we always want to, we're hearing, oh, these girls are good for nothing. They fight, they do this and that.
Mhm.
These are girls that have some real goals in mind, that want to achieve some things. And I don't want to call it the spotlight, but the
Mhm.
direction that society often goes is to the baddie girl,
Right.
and not to, and that's another thing when young ladies get
Mhm.
good grades at school. I tell them, it's good to be smart,
Right. Right.
because, you get teased for being smart.
Yeah.
So I tell them, no, it's good to be smart.
Mhm.
And so these are the things that are the mission that we have, is um, to help them navigate through this world
I love that.
without all the bruises sometimes, if we can
Yeah.
prevent that.
Right. No, I love that. Actually, I wanted to talk with you more about that. So, what are some of the challenges that Black and Brown girls face today that people might not fully understand?
I don't think it's so much that it's the challenges of
Okay.
the space, it's
Mhm.
more of the mindset.
Oh, okay.
And the
Okay.
mindset is that, like, again, back to they don't
Mhm.
want anything, or they, too preoccupied doing this over here, but it's not focused on the girls that have set goals for themselves, that set standards for themselves. We
Mm.
have an upcoming event in April, and it's about having their own business.
Okay.
And one of the speakers is 18 years old with her own business, website set
Wow.
up.
Wow.
So those are the things that see that it's reachable.
Okay.
It's
Right.
possible.
I love that.
And instead of seeing the negative,
Mhm.
there are things that will happen. So I don't want to look at the challenges. I want to look at the
I love that.
advantages that we have. And the advantage that we have is that other girls want what they want and
Yeah.
doing what they're doing. So it's not something they sing in a movie, something they're reading in a book. They
Mhm.
get to experience it firsthand and
Yeah.
in real life.
No,
3
I
years.
really love that. Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, your work centers on empowering girls through creativity and self-love. So, how do you see that work also connecting to broader movements for social justice and equity?
Well, I think if with the work that we're working on, is that
Hmm.
we're laying the foundation.
Yeah.
So they have
Right.
some solid ground underneath their feet.
No, I
You
really
know,
love that.
like I said, those adults that
Uh-huh.
went to fight against the people fighting against the school
Hmm.
being integrated,
Hmm.
they gave me a foundation. I may not have saw it that way, but I saw some people that look like me standing up for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
And
I
so
really love that.
that's I think that's the difference. And I may not be doing anything different than some other
Hmm.
person, but I just have a different spin on my thing.
Yeah, no, I love that too. And I really appreciate how you give the girls those like positive messages because like, I feel like in our society, those kind of like messages aren't given to folks, especially I think marginalized communities. And also for me too, like I really love doing leadership development work, especially for people from marginalized communities, also going along with like we gotta get more, folks in positions of power. And I think like sometimes like people aren't pushed towards that. And I don't know, I studied sociology in school too, and I remember learning about like how certain groups are like prioritized to others, like maybe pushing some of the students into more like manual labor, those kind of things. And it's like not seeing them as like also pushing folks into like STEM or like industries that can really help propel them and their futures. And I think that's really beautiful work that you do because I think it's not like a common thing that we see with the dominant culture, at least. I feel like that's why like people in our communities really needs to step up and help to empower these younger generations and letting them see what kind of potentials they have. And, I love what you were saying too, just about like not seeing the deficits, but seeing like the assets that they bring and, just helping them to see, what's your potential? How can you grow as a person? So I think that's really beautiful work that you do.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And for me too, what I think too happens is that we forget about the saying, the glass half full or half empty.
Right.
We forget about that. We're like, I don't have a glass.
Oh, yeah. No, totally.
Right? We just dismiss. No, you got to see something. Either you're on your way or you're going to sit back.
Yeah.
Or you're going to, even for me, a friend said to me one day, she said, "You're not afraid to speak up?" And I'm like, "No." I said, "But if you keep continuing to say, I can't speak up, you won't be able to." Yeah. And you don't have to go speak up for everything, because I told someone I may not know enough about whales to go fight on their behalf. That's for someone else to do.
Yeah.
But I do know firsthand, and I told someone I lived through when things were segregated. So there was a whole different time and place. So yes, maybe now this administration may be trying to strip some of those things.
Right.
But a lot of these children now already know what it felt like, where going in the back door or being told you would sit it there, that's a story to them. But when you live it in real life, you say, okay, wait a minute, I overcame that. Then what else is possible for me to complete and do? So.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And, I really believe that it takes all of us to work together to really like work towards social change. And, that's what I'm hoping to do with the podcast, to show that like anyone could be involved, anyone could really step up and make a difference. But what role do community members, so this can be like parents, mentors, educators, play in supporting this next generation of leaders?
Well, parents should be the first, I feel, should be the first line of defense, even if they don't have what they think the tools. Going back to my mother, she didn't know how to thread a needle, but she got me the supplies I needed.
Okay.
So that should be the first. And then, those in the education system, those, even neighbors sometimes. Achille and the bee was a good example of that when she needed to study for the spelling bee.
Yeah.
It was the drug dealer, it was the mailman, it was the lady in the grocery store. So that's a real thing of when the community comes together on your behalf. And we can't wait to we win a gold medal to say, oh, I was, I wish I would have been there, or whatever. It could be something simple. I mean, I've had people, when we had events where you pay to enter, I had people that would pay actually for a child to attend that they didn't know. Sometimes 2 or 3 children. So, so I think, community and culturally, Black and brown people, they always had layers of community, whether it be the grandparents in the home. I remember my mom used to walk some of my nieces and nephews to school. My sister or brothers would drop them off in the morning, and there was a school in our neighborhood because we actually moved from Bedford-Stuyvesant to Flatbush. And that was like one of the best schools in that area. Well, in Brooklyn, I should say. And I remember my mom walking them to school, And so I think we've always mastered that sense of village, that sense of community.
Oh, okay.
So for us to be now, so-and-so want to be rollers, what is that? Like a speed skater, it's going to be someone in her village that's going to make sure that gets done.
No, I really love that. Yeah, I really, and also as a parent myself too, I definitely can see that. And, I think it's really beautiful, how you think that way. So, what legacy do you hope the Afro Puff Girl Prep Academy will leave for future generations?
I would say that more than you just matter is that you make a difference.
I love that.
And I won't say everything you do, but a great deal of what you do should really make a difference.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go after it, just like I didn't go after starting Afro Puff Girl, period. Yeah. It came after me.
Yeah.
I didn't think about starting the Prep Academy. It came after me. I didn't think of a nonprofit. It came after me. Yeah. But you have to be willing, ready, and open to whatever this journey brings your way.
Right. No, I love that you do that too. And actually, it just reminds me of something that happened between me and my daughter. Because I was actually just talking to friends about this. It's like, encourage people, especially young people, children, if they have really big dreams, just like keep encouraging them. Don't squash and be like, no, you can't do that. So it's just like, actually, my daughter and I were like at dinner the other day. And I think she's been watching just videos of the ice skater who won the, I think the Olympic medal just this past. Yeah, and I think she's like really into ice skating right now. So the funny thing is, she wanted to do ice skating lessons. I'm like, sure, I could find somewhere to take ice skating lessons. And she told me, she's like, yeah, I want to take ice skating lessons because I want to start practicing for the Olympics. I was like, okay, cool. No, and instead of saying like, no, that's really hard to do, like I told her, yeah, let's do that, because I was talking to my friends about that today. Like, if we teach them, go for the stars. I really love that.
Exactly.
Saying, like, go for the stars. If you don't reach that, at least you'll land on the moon. So I didn't want to like keep it like, no, you got to keep it realistic. I'm like, hey, if you want to get into the Olympics, let's try to make it there.
And she may, change her mind. That's one thing I do give my mom credit for. I like, I want to do this. She, she was always open to let us try. And one time I was at a festival, and this is words that I still share with people. It was a little boy there, maybe about 10, 11. And this lady, she was packing up to leave. And he said, oh, can I help you carry this outside or something along that line? And another lady said, no, so the woman said, no, it's too heavy. She said, you didn't even let him try.
Oh,
and I
wow.
never forgot that. And she didn't even tell a woman, well, you don't know what he could carry. She just said, you didn't even let him try.
Yeah.
She said, you could place it in his arms, and if he says it's too heavy,
that's true.
But if it's not too heavy.
Yeah.
So
don't make
just
that choice
like
for
that
them.
with the ice skating,
Yeah.
Sometimes kids says, oh, this is harder than I think. Then some kids, give it their all. Some kids, sometimes if you ever hear like maybe a 5-6-year-old, they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a doctor. I want to be a gymnast. They'll name 4 or 5 things, and they believe they're going to be all of them at the same time. It's not like, no, then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this, but you let them put those feelers out. I wanted to be a coroner at one point. Okay. And I went all the way up to the point when they took us to the morgue.
Wow.
And I had to do dissection on all kind of stuff.
Wow. Okay.
And that's when they lost me. I was like, I pass,
Yeah.
But I think I don't remember how long I studied it, but I really wanted to do that. And then I said, let me stick to my needle and thread. I can, I had no, I could take it out if it didn't come out looking good,
Yeah.
But, I always say if it's, I have a design and it's called Ballerina. And
Okay,
one
cool.
shoe the little girl has on is a ballet slipper, and then you
I
just
love
see
that.
from her knees down. And the
Uh-huh.
other one is a pair of high top sneakers.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's why I call it Ballerina.
I love
And I
that.
came up with that idea and I tell people all the time, they say, oh, what made you make this? I said, it's
Mhm.
for girls that want to play sports, but they also want to dance.
I love that. That's really
And
cool.
it came from a friend of mine. She told me one day, she said that her daughter, she
Mhm.
said, I paid all this money for her to go to basketball camp. Now she want to do ballet. I
Uh-huh.
said, if it's a financial reason,
Right.
you can't give her both. I understand that. But
Right.
if it's not, why
Mhm.
can't she? And that's how I got Ballerina.
I really
You
love
can
that.
play sports and you can dance.
Yeah.
If, and like I said, if it's not a financial situation,
Yeah.
you know. But there's also a lot of times there's free classes, free this.
Right.
We just have to do some homework and
No,
research.
totally. Because I lived in the Bay Area for quite a while, and that's one thing that I really appreciated about the Bay Area. There's like so many free or low cost resources out there for folks. I did it with my daughter too when we were up there. But yeah, the Bay Area I think is amazing
Mhm.
and rich in terms of like the resources that it has for people to really reach their dreams.
And forget, I tell people I have a friend now, and every time I say to him, I say, oh, do you know how to do such? He said, you can go to YouTube, right, Francine?
Right.
And I've been like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But there are some people that created and learned some things just from watching other people do
Right.
it. So
Mhm.
it's not, you may not be in a class, but you're in a
Yeah.
class by yourself,
Right.
and you could even build up your confidence or you could build up
Mhm.
your knowledge or whatever it is. And then you
Yeah.
go, because like sometimes they have like classes at the gym and people have been
Mhm.
going for a while, so they know the routine.
Okay.
Right. And then you
Right.
walk in and you're like, oh, they were left. Okay. Right.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes you can learn in advance. So when you walk
Mhm.
into the situation, I won't say you know everything, but you're better equipped.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I agree with you too. I feel like there's so much wealth of knowledge on YouTube. I think I was even trying to
Mhm.
learn how to play the guitar through YouTube. But
Mhm.
I'd love to hear from you. Like, what advice would you give to a young girl who has a dream but doesn't yet believe that it's possible for her?
Then maybe it's not a dream. Because
Mm,
I think when people,
okay.
let me go back. There's two things that I say. You
Uh-huh.
have a dream and then you can have a vision.
Mm-hmm.
A
Yeah.
dream can just be the momentary thought process. A vision
Okay.
is more, for me, is like prolonged that you could see yourself becoming this thing.
Ah, I love that. I really love that.
So if it's just a temporary and say, oh, I will make up a show. I want to go
Mhm.
on Dinosaurs R Us.
Okay.
But you don't make any movement towards that.
Right.
It was a dream. But when it's a
Mhm.
vision, you're a lot different. So you don't have to tell them. Sometimes you have to maybe have them pump the brake. But when
Uh-huh.
someone really has a vision for what they want to do or complete,
Mhm.
they will keep focused. They will keep going at it.
Okay.
There are some children that speak 4 or 5 languages. Because
Right.
once they learn one, they're like, oh, wait a minute, let me, and it's
Right.
not that they want to make a career in, but they had a vision for themselves. Oh, I got 2 languages down. I'm going to get to 3.
Uh-huh.
There's some young children that can play chess better than grown adults
Mm.
because they knew to make one move at a time.
Yeah.
So I don't think you get discouraged from your vision
Mhm.
because you will find other tools, other ways. Um, you may even come home from school and say, hey, mom, they got this program.
Uh-huh.
But a dream can, it could
Yeah.
be there, but you're not in it for the long haul. That's just mine.
Right.
I don't want ever somebody say I bust a bubble. But when you
Yeah.
have a vision for what you want to do, a vision for your life,
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
vision for how you want this to play out. Even if it doesn't play out, you don't give up.
Yeah.
Because you see yourself at this, at this finish line.
Uh-huh.
And I don't want to call it a finish line, but you see yourself progressing.
Mm-hmm.
You say, okay, wait a minute. That idea. I mean, there's some T-shirts that I have that I thought was the greatest concept. And it was crickets on it. And they're like, oh, nobody liked that like I did,
Right.
And then there's things that, I constantly sell out and have to keep reprinting.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't give up. I didn't get discouraged. Just that thing didn't fall in line. But it may be a time and place that it comes around full circle. And then people, wait a minute. I remember that lady had this. And,
Yeah.
So that's why I call it vision, because you can see with a vision. Sometimes the dream is not always clear.
No, thank you for making that distinction. I never thought about it that way. I think I use it interchangeably. Like my dream is my vision and, vice versa. But I love just making that distinction of no, vision is something that you create a path for. I thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people are going to learn from that wisdom too. And, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I had such a wonderful time getting to know you and the work that you do. I just think you're such a beautiful person, such an inspiration.
Thank you.
And but just as we're wrapping up, if listeners can take just one lesson from your story today, what do you hope that it would be?
I would say I would like to see people get out of my story is that keep reinventing yourself. Don't, if this stops here, then you say, okay, how else could I use these talents and these gifts that I have? And then you just keep motivating to do something else. Because I started out, I remember my very first job, I worked for a pattern company called Simplicity Pattern Company. Mm-hmm. And I was what they call a pattern grader, and it makes the pattern different sizes so people can, 8 or 10 or 12. Then I worked for my first job was the designer Calvin Klein. I worked for him. Then I worked for Simplicity. Then I worked for several different people in the fashion industry before I even did my own thing. Okay. So I learned from behind the scenes. Uh-huh. But what I would like to see for me is even if a parent doesn't understand their child's vision, is to give them the tools to live it out. Okay. Because I think that's very, very important. Back to saying that box is too heavy to, I don't know how, but let me see what I can do to help you. Yeah. Wow. And that's what I would like to see happen more is that, yes, we do have parents that's there on the sidelines cheering them on, and those children are very fortunate. Right. But I would like to see more, even if the parent doesn't understand what they're hoping to achieve. Yeah. To give them the tools or help them gather that network of people to help them to strive to see their vision become a reality. Yeah. No, I really love that. Thank you again. But just lastly, how can people find you if they'd like to connect with you? Oh, so I have a Instagram and Facebook that says Sticks, STICKS, and AND, Stones, STONES, then the letter T, the number 4, and the letter U. So it's Sticks and Stones T4U. Excellent. Well, thank you again. And, I wish you nothing but the best just moving forward. And, I know that you're going to continue to be inspiring to other people. And I'm so grateful to be connected with you. But yeah, I hope that you have a good rest of your day. I've really had a pleasure talking with you. And thank you again for your time. Taking the time to be in conversation with me. I'm truly grateful for that. Oh, and thank you so much. Okay. Have a great night. Thank you. You too. Okay. Take care. Okay. Bye. Okay. Bye.
Thank you for being here and tuning in to Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community. Your presence in this movement matters. If today's conversation moved you, share it, talk about it, and keep the work going. Together, we're not just imagining change, we're making it. Until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and stay in the fight.
myself, relax, lean back. It's a brand new day, and every time I feel so down that a frown is all that's on my face, I remind myself to take a breath. It's a brand new day.